Hey guys, so I would like to give you an introduction to using Ansible and vSphere. As true noob form, this is my first presentation and I don't have a clicker, so I tried to borrow one, didn't help. So Ansible, is it? No, it's not, I didn't click it. No, it's not, you're gonna have to click. Okay, so Ansible and automation. So hot right now, right? That's what everybody's saying. Use Ansible, right, for everything. Next, please. So my name's Carl Capoza. I work at Giant Eagle as a Linux systems administrator. My projects on my list right now are VMware software design data center, defined data center. I also do OpenShift Docker Container Initiative, automation through Ansible, and a bunch of other Red Hat Linux stuff. You know, as everybody in this room, I'll probably wear multiple hats. Next. So for agendas, I'm big on agendas, right? Making a good meeting requires an agenda. So for this presentation, the only thing I really want to do is three things, right? I want you to start thinking about configuration management in your own environment. I don't really care what tool you use. I care that you think about it, right? And you think about standards and have those conversations. I would like to introduce you to Ansible as a product overall, right? Just understanding bare bones what it is, high level, not really deep. And then I want to give you the tools to get started. I want to empower you to do things on your own and do it yourself in your own environment. Next, please. So why configuration management, right? There's a lot of different opinions about configuration management. I can only tell you what it means to me, right? It's a standard, right? You get standards from multiple people in your organization, and those standards you need to apply to different endpoints, right? And for me, that needs to be consistent across all my legacy environments as well as everything else, right? All my new builds. I need to have the same NTP settings. I need to have the same syslog settings on all my servers, right? Otherwise, you walk into stuff blind and you don't trust it. You don't trust your infrastructure. The second reason is you protect yourself against stupid errors, right? Random changes. Somebody changes something in your environment and then your server goes down. You don't know why, right? Persistence of managing your configuration will help you with that. The last thing is, I don't know how many people have walked into environments that are not their own, right? You walk in and you're like, what the hell is this? Sorry. My bad. How many people have walked into environments that are not their own, right? Day one, you get on a job, you got through the interview, you're like, yeah, I got a new job. Oh, now I have all this mess to deal with, right? So that's where configuration management helps you, right? It helps you to plant grass seed, right, in your brownfield environment. You're planting grass seed to make it your own over time, so you have touched every piece of it. What it will not help you with, as a tool, technology will not help you fix the discussions. You have to have those with your teams, right? You have to say, what standards do I want to apply to what environments and how do I want to implement them? And those conversations have to happen, right? One team, one dream. You got to get full buy-in, and then you decide on what tool you want to use or what standard you want to apply to the environment. Next slide, please. So that's my check mark. My agenda, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with that topic. If you guys want to ask about it later, I'll be either at the bar or you can ask me at the end. Next slide, please. So what is Ansible? So Ansible is an automation engine, right? It takes some inputs based on a file and it moves it through its automation engine that has plugins, modules, and inventory files and APIs and all that good stuff. And it applies a configuration to an endpoint, right? Be it a network switch or a host. Now, the one thing I want you to take from this slide is that it's similar to every other product you're using for automation now, right? Whether you're using SCCM in your Windows environment or you're using Puppet or you're using Chef, it's just similar, right? They all have the same components. That doesn't make it sexy, in my mind. Next slide, please. So why Ansible works for me, particularly, is that I work in Linux, right? It's all SSH based. So I don't have to install agents on multiple different configured devices. The only thing I really have to do is have SSH enabled, which that's a good point for me to leverage, right? My AX systems have SSH, my Cisco routers have SSH. That's it, it's secure. Compliance people don't get wavy about it. Second point, why Ansible is good. So I can manage multiple different endpoints with Ansible. I can manage my AIX systems, I can manage my Windows systems, I can manage my Linux systems, I can manage my routers, my Cisco routers, my load balancers. I can manage all my hypervisors with it to some degree. So that might not be good for people who are sitting in chairs where they have individual focus. I only focus on VMware. But for people who are in small shops, right, and they have to own all the equipment, right, everything I own, this might be a tool you want to look at to invest in because you have one uniform language to apply configuration out to the rest of the world, right? And it saves you time. So I like it because it's readable too, right? It's made in yet another markup language, right? Just another form of language that we use in computer industry. Now, for corporate users who might look at persisting their architecture using Ansible Tower across multiple different environment endpoints, I like the readability because I can give it to my junior admin. I can say, hey, these are our configuration standards. Go to our internal GitHub, check it out, look, read it, let me know if you have any questions. This is what we run on a nightly basis, right? That readability helps team communication, right? So I don't have to explain it to them. It's human readable. And the last thing I like about it, well, two last things. One, it's free, so it's easy to get started. And two, I can easily set it up and install it very quickly. Next slide. You're going to be clicking for a little bit. Okay? So that's my next bullet point, right? That I clear that item. I hope I cleared that item for you, right? That's what Ansible is, this automation engine. Next, we're going to give you the tools and empower you to get started with it, right? Like I said, it's a free environment. You can play with that at yourself. You can play with it in your home lab if you want. So quick installation is pretty easy. All I require is a StarNix system. We say StarNix, that means anything AIX, FreeBSD, Linux in general, right? Something that's command line interface. And then
Microsoft just released one.
Yeah, I know they did. I know Microsoft released one. I didn't test that yet. I'm not putting that in there until I test it. Easy install, right? For installation, I prefer to use the Python package manager, which is pip, right? If you don't have pip, you can easily install it using the command that's on the screen. Sudo easy install pip, right? And then after that, it's two more commands to get you up and running. Pip install Ansible, pip install Python PyVMommy. PyVMommy is what I refer to as a plugin, right? It helps you to communicate with architectures that are underneath and products that might not have an interface that's fully RESTful, all right? Next slide, please. So, I never install anything without verifying that it works, right? Does it work? I want to see it work before I even actually start playing with it. Catch errors, right? So an easy way to do that in your Ansible installation is to type Ansible-m ping localhost. It should come back successful. If it doesn't, Google it. You'll get an error. That's pretty much it. Next. So this is what's really cool. I follow patterns when I develop things and configuration standards in my environment. My patterns usually start with, research. And then I write a bit of code, and then I test a bit of code, and then I write another bit of code. And this is the same pattern that you want to use probably when you're developing your own configuration management standards across environments. You're only going to get about 80%, right? You're always going to have edge cases, but the 80% is what matters. That's what saves you time. So for this exercise, I'm going to start by researching the vSphere API. Other things to note, that's my playbook. Those are my listed instructions on the right-hand side of this screen. That's all it is, right? I don't have anything else to manage my syslog. It's one file, well, two, but we'll get to that. It's one file, and that's my whole configuration set. Next. So, researching the vCenter 6.5 API. You use the Explorer, right? So, really easy to get to, and I will give kudos to the VMware team for making it so easy to browse our API Explorer. You can type in the vCenter hostname /API Explorer, and it drops you right into the interface where you can select whatever module you want, all listed in alphabetical order. Or you can go to your vCenter hostname, fully qualified domain name, and just browse the APIs. Next, please. So research, this is what I love to do, by the way. so finding things, right? You get a list of fully qualified RESTful resources and how to interact with them when you get to that screen, right? So I'm going to target the get host, right? Because I need information, and I like automation. I don't want to manage any more files than what I have to. So that's what I'm going to manage for this exercise. The one thing you really have to pay attention to is if you hit the trial button, make sure you're authenticated. Top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll hit authorize, type in your vCenter username and password, and then that's the live data. That's data in your environment, right? The other thing is, if you look at the curl command, it gives you the actual endpoint for the REST API that you want to call. We'll use that later in our Ansible playbook. Next, please. One more. Yeah. Cool. There you go. Sorry, animation sucks. So that's the completed check mark for my research, right? That's what I need to know after I am writing Ansible, and that's what I need to know. I need to know my API endpoint. I'm going to click this. Okay, is that cool? So before I even get started, I wanted to take a look at first what variables are, and there's a small section of this code that I don't highlight, right, as a login or anything else. I call it a prerequisite, right? It's just something that you need to run your engine. And for this case, I need to import some local variables, right? They're located in my secret file. You'll notice it as variables in my text, and this stuff that I don't want to share, right? It's my username, password, my vCenter server. I don't want that stuff floating around GitHub, right? So I ignore that stuff when I push and pull, because what you're concerned about is the content. You don't need to see my username and password. So to import that stuff, I use a standard module. It's called include variables, right? Include vars. And what's significant is that I use the namespace, the name variable, and I name it secrets, which will capture all the information from that file and give it to me as variables to run later in my task. I'll use it throughout. So now that we have that, let's get into logging into an API, right, overall, because that's what we're here for, to see how it interacts. So API authentication is definitely one of the requirements, right? You have to have a token to interact with any API. You have to send it some user credentials. In this slide, I want you to recognize a couple things, right? I'm using in the URL module, the secret host name, which was in my secret file. That's a variable I defined. And you can define any number of variables you want. You can call it any file if you want. I don't care what you call it, right? It's just a file for me. But that's how I use it. I use it with quotations around it and curly braces, two, to be exact. You can also notice that I use the username and password, right? It keeps my code clean. That means that any user in my environment who has the proper authentication, which you monitor in some other way, shape, or form, Active Directory, whatever you want to say, has that same access. The other thing I want you to notice is a different way that you can register information to Ansible to use it later. So what I do right now is I register to save values as login, which has my token, my access token for the API, and any other information returned when I call this RESTful API. So after that's done, you're logged in. Next, we're going to look at getting host information. So getting host information from API, and what I really want you to notice is it's the same pattern. I'm using the same module. I'm using the URI module. It's a core Ansible system item, right? The only thing that I'm really changing is the URL that I go to, which is the REST endpoint for the resource, which we researched before, which is REST vCenter host. And what I want to do is I'm going to get all the hosts that are attached to my vCenter, because I'm lazy. I don't want to track that. I don't care what's there. I want to persist configuration across it. If it's there, I want it to be set. That's it. The other thing that you should notice is how I access the variable for my session token, right? In the previous screen, I showed you a login, right? And I captured all that information into a login variable. That login variable has a set cookie option that'll send your authentication token through to the service so you don't have to re-authenticate with each request. That's another kudos to the API developers at VMware. Excellent. I don't want to have to re-authenticate every call I have. I register those values that are returned, which will be in JSON format. That doesn't really matter. It's in a format that's easily readable by the internet to a VC host variable. That means I have a list of hosts. Next, I want to set the syslog host for each service, for each ESXi host. Now, for this option, right, and you notice the same pattern is evolving here, right? In Ansible, you need a name to define what that configuration is, and that's human readable. That's just for your users to understand it. The thing that's significant about this slide is two things. One, I'm leveraging PyVMommy, right, to call this. I'm not calling the API natively. I'm using a third-party program that was developed that helps me interface with older APIs inside the environment. I'm using secrets, right? I'm using my same username and password across each item. I'm not using anything else. Second thing is, you see that with item right down at the bottom of the screen. That's how we do looping, right? So for each host that I pull back in VC host, I'm going to apply the same configuration setting to all of them. I don't care which one it is. And that would be the syslog global log host, right? It's an advanced configuration parameter. So we got our syslog set. That will set your syslog host value in vSphere for every ESXi server in your environment in one fell swoop. Next, what's the sense of having a service definition if it's not running, right? So we want to make sure it's running before we go. Now, the one thing is I'm leveraging the same module, right? I'm leveraging PyVMommy. I hate that name. I can't say it. I want to leverage PyVMommy. But the significant portion of this slide is not really, it's very obvious, right? This is reusable code, right? So the only thing I changed in this slide was the module name and a couple parameters that I Googled, right, from the module required parameters, which is my service name and my service state. Everything else is the same. I'm still using the host name from secrets. I'm I'm still using my username, my password. I'm still using the same looping principle that I did earlier with taking all my vCenter hosts and going through JSON and looping them through and applying the same configuration. Only it's acting on the service at this point. When my playbook runs, right? Running a playbook's really simple, really easy. These slides are on GitHub, so don't even worry about reading it. It's just Ansible playbook, whatever your playbook name is. I have no worries about inventory because I'm an automation person and I don't want to worry about inventory files. So that's what the API does for me. It allows me to leverage those things. At the end of it, overall, your playbook recap will tell you everything that was changed in your environment, right? If it was changed, and a number count, and everything that was correct. So if it comes back and it says 6 are okay, nobody changed anything. It says 1 changed, hey Billy, what you do? That's pretty much it. So that's the end of my agenda items, right? That's a tool that is, thinking about configuration management in a way that you can abstract it and move it to multiple different environments, as well as, some knowledge about Ansible overall, right? Further reading, check out Jay Frapp's blog. Awesome. He's the one who first introduced me to the URI calls and using the RESTful API. Everything should be virtual. In Ansible, you can actually call PowerShell commands natively, right? And run them from local environments. So yeah, check out his stuff. It's kind of gnarly, but it's good. Cal Ruddy's vBrownBag presentation on interacting with the RESTful API is definitely a requirement if you're going to use any of the APIs in VMware. It really shows you how to get started with the SDKs, install Postman, make calls yourself, authenticate, get an overall understanding of that sort of product. VMware Ansible modules are linked in the presentation directly to the VMware ones that are provided by PUI vMommy. They are not the APIs. They are the middle tier and what should be considered the old SOAP sort of infrastructure. Ansible documentation. That's where I learned everything, right? So I go to docs.ansible.com and I'm like, okay, let's see what I want to learn today. My self-plug, right? So we recently started a local community group. It's called PGH Hacks. And what we do is we play with products like this, right? We play with Ansible in your environment. We talk about blogging and using Yugo to spin up your blog on GitHub, right? Free of charge, right? And I started at it with the help of others just because I wanted to hack on something and I wanted to have an allocated time to hack on something at least once a month, try out something new, right? So now we're going to do it every second Monday of the month, which Ariel loves because I don't have to write a blog post to announce it or anything like that. It's just the second Monday of every month. And I'll commit to being there. I hope you come out, right? Follow us on Twitter with the hashtag. And yeah, we'll try to make it interesting. Bring yourself, bring your content, right? Everybody gets buy-in. That's all I had. Questions? I don't know if I hit my 15-minute box, but do I have questions?
Way over.
I am garrulous, right? I'm like talkative. Any questions?
I do have.
What's up?
I'm big into configuration management too. Different tool for the most part.
What do you use?
PowerShell CM.
Nice.
It's mostly Windows environments.
Yeah.
But the one problem we have, and I'm curious if you have this, is around managing those. So you
The configuration files?
Yes. So you showed us
Friend.
for VM.
Love you. Okay,
For the rest of them.
So I leverage Ansible for most of the things that I do.
For questions.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
thanks.
I leverage Ansible for most of my configuration management in my environment. But to manage that, I use Git, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I use basically a source repository, right? Because that gives me the ability to literally look at a file and say, who changed this last? How did it get into master? And who's working on what, right? If you don't use GitHub and you don't have a GitHub account, that's where my slide decks are going to be at. Get one, right? And don't have the misconception that other people have, which is, if I push stuff out there to GitHub, everybody's going to bash me, right? Who cares? Right? We only care about making people better, right? And I think I heard something in the Geek Whispers a long time ago, which was, GitHub has changed into what the forums were of the 90s, right? GitHub is directly interfacing with people who develop product and helping people to develop better product. Because as engineers, they can't take into account every use case, right? I can't see things that I don't know about. So doing that, blame them. Like, use Git blame. Actually, come to a little hack. I'll sit with you and we will talk about Git from my perspective for as long as you want.
I've used Git, I just haven't used it for that. So.
Yeah, man, why not? Just a side-by-side view and being able to say, okay, what changed?
Right.
Okay, that broke. Let me pull that back out of my source repo and force push it over to master branch before I get more problems. Even that is worth it. Any other questions? First presentation at 40, I hope I did well. You guys have a great day.